Hanin, Buju, I'm so thankful. Chimigwach for being here, to each and every one of you for this week. Got a lot of good work done, and I just want to say right off the bat, I'm hearing you, Chiefs. More time for resolutions. We keep pushing that at our, every time that we do develop the agenda. We're going to keep that in mind going forward again, maybe less and less presentations and more time for resolutions. So we hear you. I know that when we did that initially last summer, we finished all the resolutions on time for the first time ever, and that's good. And we need to get back to that to prioritize that. So we want to acknowledge that we are gathered here on the ancestral unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation. We hold up our elders, our veterans, the host drummers, spirit wolf singers, and knowledge keeper. Claudette Commanda, thank you for opening the assembly in a good way. We recognize the Eagle staffs in the room and all the ceremonial items that are here. And we acknowledge Chief Greg Sarazan, the Algonquins of Pikwaktagon, for welcoming us to their territory. We thank all the chiefs, all the proxies for being with us this week, and the AFN team that have pulled this assembly together. We thank the ministers, the members of parliament from all political parties, and senators that have attended, and their public service. These jobs are not always easy. We recognize the media as well for being here. Thank you. I'll say this though, every time the chiefs speak, we get an email, and so keep speaking our truth. And whether it's, we've got a lot of positive comments, but a lot of negative too, and they're watching what you say out there, and then we hear about it. So I'm thankful to Canadians across the country that have been watching online and sending the positive comments. So we lift up Regional Chief Benedict, Grand Chief DeBosque, and the Ontario Chiefs for welcoming us this week. We lift up the Iroquois Caucus and thank Chiefs for supporting the renewal of our special relationship earlier this week. It was an honor to sign off on your agreement today. And we lift up the youth for making their voices heard. We need to keep the fires burning. So we lift up Chief Flett and the members of the St. Teresa Point Asiniu Nation for being here and speaking so strongly about the housing situation in their communities. We express our gratitude and ongoing support for the Sutherland Weenie family in their pursuit of healing and meaningful change to honor Jaylee. We also lift up the Saskatchewan Chiefs for supporting the family and for their call to action for a national review of Indigenous patient safety. We also pay tribute to the Chiefs and first responders that are fighting fires and supporting evacuees in Ontario and other parts of this country. We send our love to Chief Pavola and thank Chiefs for supporting the emergency resolution earlier today for her First Nation. We fully expect the federal and provincial governments to do everything that they can to provide immediate support and financial resources the band is requesting, not just to respond but to rebuild. Sadly, this disaster has again exposed the growing infrastructure gaps in this country between First Nations and non-First Nations communities. When it comes to managing the risk of climate change, the Conference Board of Canada's analysis concluded that a $35 billion investment would be required to recover buildings, housing, transportation, and utilities over the next 10 years. This includes the cost of emergency preparedness, the preservation of fire breaks, which are necessary to mitigate the threat created by climate change. Again, First Nations are on the front line, and it's not just fires. Flooding, drought, severe weather collectively present a significant threat to the resilience of our communities. Unfortunately, most federal funding is going into recovery after the disaster instead of taking steps to prevent damage in the first place. This means investing in community alert systems, on all hazard risk assessments, essential training and equipment for emergency response personnel that are significantly underfunded. Chiefs, your resolutions are leading the way. Earlier this year, the Prime Minister invited Canadians to tell his government what they were for. He said he did not want to hear what we were against, but he wanted to hear what people were for. So personally, I believe all views should be respected and heard in this country, but I understand the Prime Minister is coming from a different place. So we are happy to focus on what First Nations are for, because we have been proposing constructive solutions to make this country better for the generations to come. First Nations have always been for Canada in difficult times. Starting in 1812, through the two world wars, our men were at the front lines of those. The Korean, the Afghanistan wars, the pandemic, two Quebec referendums. Today, chiefs in Alberta, Quebec, and the North are protecting Canada's sovereignty for all citizens, not just First Nations. This week has been another good opportunity to remind the federal government and all Canadians what First Nations are for. And it starts with justice, truth, and reconciliation. We lift up chiefs for supporting the Manitoba resolution, calling for Indian residential school denialism to be criminalized as hate, because we know we need to call it what it is. As I said in my opening address, First Nations are stronger today in Canada than ever before. We know the stronger we get, the more hate goes up. So we need to act now, especially as we sadly lose more survivors and others who bore witness to the horrific reality of the Indian residential schools. We will keep up this fight when Parliament resumes in the fall. Chiefs have demonstrated again that First Nations are for economic growth and prosperity for all, but not at the expense of our rights or the government's legal obligations to our people. And you have shown again that First Nations are for access to clean drinking water and clean water as a fundamental human right. Canada is now against that. Your resolutions regarding major projects and First Nations clean water legislation will guide us this fall. Rights holders must be heard by Parliament on both bills. So we hope this government won't use this majority to shut down these debates down, because this government must understand that sometimes the power of a majority government is not using the power. This will be one of those times. We also restate our call for members of Parliament and Senators studying these bills to travel to our First Nations communities, to see the situation for themselves and talk with community members face to face. When it comes to the upcoming First Ministers meeting that will happen on October 26, Chiefs have made it clear that First Nations are for a constructive and ongoing dialogue that is rooted in respect for First Nations rights, a new country that we should be building together for our children. And I lift up Chiefs for the discussion and resolutions for our children this week. Chiefs, we thank you for the mandates you have provided this week for the First Ministers meeting. We all agree it can't be a one and done on October 26th. Your resolutions will guide our next steps, starting with the meeting with the premiers next week. We've been on the phone with premiers all last evening, making sure that they're hearing what you're saying. Regional Chief LeBeau and I will be meeting with the Council of the Federation in Prince Edward Island. In addition to taking forward the mandate you have delivered, we will invite the First Ministers to join us in ceremony on October 25th. Prior to that, this September, I'm going to call for a one day of just ceremony with our elders, and we'll, thank you. We'll work on that before we even get to October 25th. I'd like to hear from our elders from coast to coast. So we'll do that on October 26th. This week also represents the best of the AFN. I am sure proud of I'm sure our ancestors would be very proud of us, because we know First Nations have overcome great odds to protect our rights, our laws, our resources and waters. Our ancestors have fought on this land, and we have fought in Parliament, and we have fought in colonial courts and won, and we keep winning over and over. The rest of the climb is up to all of us now, and we understand Canada is at a crossroads in its relationship with First Nations. The ministers that were here this week acknowledge this reality. With each passing day, more and more Canadians understood that First Nations hold the keys to Canada's future prosperity. Over $600 billion of projects are forecasted for First Nations lands over the next decade, but they won't advance without the support of First Nations. Chiefs from the entire Assembly of First Nations, we wish you a safe travels home, a safe summer with your family. I hope you get some rest. It's an absolute honor to be your advocate here in Ottawa and stand with you to advance your priorities. And I thank the Chiefs daily that call and ask for support. I'm so always honored every time you call. Nothing's too small we'll be there to help your community as best that we can. So we look forward to visiting more communities as we prepare for Parliament, as we prepare for the federal budget and that submission, and the First Minister's meeting this fall, guided by your policies, guided by the late Justice Murray Sinclair and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission calls to action. We'll be guided as well by the calls for justice from the public inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. We will be there with you, building this new country together, just as our elders and our ancestors has wanted. We can't be left out of tables anymore. We need our full seat at the table. So by strengthening our relations united, we'll achieve anything. But we gotta stay united and keep pushing that door open, because they can't leave us off of decision-making tables anymore. So I'm so thankful that we're hopefully trying to start something different and a real push for the chiefs to be heard in this country. So thank you so very much. Miigwech.